Good evening. I've been asked by the Office of Her Excellency to discuss something about an opportunity, climate change, climate action actually. Well, it all started at the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. Well, I was told that the first slide, yes, that's Windness, north of England, at the time when the Industrial Revolution was at its height, the coal-fired chemical industry, which eventually led to the widespread use of fossil fuel for a massive change in lifestyle until we reach a stage nowadays where we live a high-carbon society. We hear about China, India, the United States. These countries are the world's top emitters. China has exceeded the US as far as global emissions are concerned. Nowadays, we have a situation where there is an unequivocal doubt that the carbon levels are increasing. The first indication dates back to the 19th century, but it was Charles Keeling who actually raised the issue way back in the 50s. The situation over the last 200 years is indicative of steep rising, and it is very clear that the cause of all this is the economy. What kind of economy is being adopted? Well, as far as CO2 emissions are concerned, we have reached a record over the past 500,000 years. That's not temperature, what you saw over there, but it's CO2 emissions, which means that if we stop emissions now, temperatures will continue to rise. Antarctica, how does it come into it? Most of what we know about paleoclimates, the ancient climates, is derived from the study of ice in Antarctica. The ice traps air, analysis of air reveals carbon emissions, not carbon, sorry. Apologies. Where are we going to? What are the future scenarios? Well, basically, those are the options presented to us by the IPCC models. The worst case scenario is basically the one in red. That's the apocalypse, basically. A scenario whereby no policy on climate is being adopted. We have a budget. Humanity has a budget, a 1,000 gigaton carbon budget, which we can't afford to exceed, to be in line with the 2 degrees threshold agreed upon in Paris. What would be the consequences if we go beyond what is acceptable? Well, basically, Lord Stern highlighted it beautifully over there. We have impacts in terms of water, food, temperatures, drought, and basically it all leads to climate chaos. Climate chaos which can only be addressed through economics, not science, but economics. And that is where the opportunity lies, shifting from the high carbon mode to the low carbon mode, to decarbonization, to green economies, so that countries like small island states, and that includes us, would avert the difficulties that are envisaged with regards to sea level rise, for example. Those are islands in the South Pacific. We are also considering possibilities. What if places like those become uninhabitable? Ocean acidification, a very complex issue which is rarely talked about as far as climate action is concerned, climate change, I mean. CO2 dissolves in the oceans, it acidifies the oceans, it affects ecosystems. Basically, it threatens ecosystem collapse. Ecosystem collapse, literally. But it's not just that. It's also about framing climate change, portraying climate change. If we want to talk to politicians about climate change, we have to put it into the perspective of human health. The impacts of climate change all affect human health in one way or another, and there are costs pertaining to this. And that is where the economics comes in. I may have presented this initially in the form of a science approach, but actually it's all about economics. Change in lifestyle, from high carbon to low carbon, to keep within the 2 degrees. Beyond that, it would be too costly to adapt. How does the SDG issue comes into it? Well, basically, there are those targets. It's all about adaptation. It's all about investing in resilience. It's all about equipping populations with trying to cope with climate change happening now. We need to invest as far as mitigation is concerned, and that is where climate proofing comes into it. National policies have to be geared on the lines of taking into account issues related to low carbon, issues related to climate change, but clearly education has a massive role. It's not education alone, however. You can educate as much as you like. I've been in education for the last 22 years teaching about all this, but the issue is change in behavior, and very often education is not enough. You need more than that. Funds, money, finance. We have recently adopted in Malta the Climate Action Act. So it's not just a global issue where we have to mobilize millions of dollars annually, all right, by an international agreement through the UNFCCC, but also at a local level. There are issues related to adaptation, related to food production, but the bottom line is simple. It's not a science thing. Climate action is not just the science is just the basis. It's all about economics. A change in lifestyle, a change in way of living, a shift from, and that is where we should go, high carbon to low carbon. A massive challenge indeed. Thank you.